Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb, and today I'm absolutely delighted to have in the studio Tim Grant from Deus Ex Capital.
Great to be here.
Great to see you.
Pleasure.
So, it's really been interesting to follow your story. Someone reached out and sort of introduced it to me, but I've known you a little while through Usman
Yes.
over at Apex E3, former, I think three time has appeared on this show. So following in his footsteps, but we'll come on to that and how that relationship works in a little bit, as well later on. Loads to chat about, and I'm sure it's not going to be one which is going to be hard to get some information out of you on as well. But it's a really impressive story. You put a post out earlier on talking about the year so far, and it's been action-packed. We're going to come into all of that. We're going to find out a little bit more about your thesis, what's happening with the company, etc., etc. But before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself and the business.
Well, firstly, thanks for having us, Toby. Really appreciate it. I've watched some of the other stuff, and especially Usman. Hi, Usman. So, yeah, look, my story, I 99 graduate trainee at UBS. I spent the first decade of my career squarely in TradFi, as we call it, in this new world. And started in London, moved over to trading floor, the world's biggest trading floor in Stamford, Connecticut with UBS. I was very much in the credit area, which is going to come back into this story. But my training is the ground zero of classic institutional capital markets. All the different asset classes, sales, trading, research, structuring, derivatives, banking. And then the tail end of that experience, I had, in retrospect, the good fortune of being around and having a front row for the financial crisis. So around 07, 08 and UBS.
Retrospect's an important word there, right?
Definitely. And actually it's a theme that I think will come back into this conversation. The what's happened in the past we need to learn from, and I'd argue in some cases we forget that. I think that's the human condition. You forget that some of this stuff just happened recently. It's 2008, it's not that long ago. And this stuff is useful as we think about the next leg of the journey. But I was in the investment bank, and then all hell broke loose at UBS. It was one of the biggest issues, and ended up being backstopped by the Swiss National Bank. But watching in the middle of what felt like the end of the world, I was in my 30s then, and it really did feel like everything was going to zero. But being at the top of the house at UBS, working with the board of directors and the group executive board, trying to figure out what do you do, and it's kind of an interesting dichotomy, and it really, in no small way, that experience has gotten me here, because I remember having this privileged access. I'd only been made MD. I was this fresh-faced young 31-year-old MD. Mixing it with these titans of industry. I'm going to say that now because the statute of limitations is over. And on the one hand, it was amazing to see kind of that level of have that access and to be able to see what was really going on. But the real element was I was really bitterly disappointed with what I saw. I just saw a bunch of middle-aged dudes, primarily Swiss at the time, trying to make their way out of this, highly political. Not necessarily, frankly, I'm not sure they really knew what they were doing. To be fair, it was a tumultuous time. But I just was really unimpressed, and that's why I left. I left at the end of 08 because I just thought UBS had lost its way. I think it's uncontroversial to say that now. Look, especially now we've seen what's happened, right? You fast forward, and now they're the big kahuna, and they've swallowed up Credit Suisse, but it wasn't that way back then. Anyway, that was a crucial moment because it made me start to think about. You kind of have, if you're in the trading floors of Wall Street, you're trained to think of the people being masters of the universe at the top of the house. As soon as that bubble bursts, and you're like, well, these are just a bunch of dudes, just a bunch of normal guys. You start to rethink, well, maybe we can innovate. Maybe we can do this differently. Maybe we can, maybe it doesn't have to be this 20th century paradigm that we've come from. And I think that has really driven me since then from 08. So I left in the end of 08, went traveling, got married, went around the world, did all that stuff. Glad I did, because we now have kids. But I then started the entrepreneurial journey, got into a startup called Benchmark Solutions.
Yeah.
We were trying to price the credit markets in real time. Very early fintech. I'm not sure we were calling it fintech.
Financial technology was
back in
still, wasn't it?
2011. Not sure it was called. I don't remember it being called fintech then. So it was in it before it was called fintech.
It was around there, wasn't it?
It was around that time. The sort of the consciousness sort of started to realise that technology was not just an enabler, it is actually what we do as an industry. I still find it funny actually that we call it fintech, because tech, financial services is technology. It's not like it's a separate thing. And I look at right now, and we'll talk about Core Prime, which is the sort of the latest focal point for me in terms of building a financial institution. It's really very technology focused. Anyway, did that experience, which was great. That got bought by Bloomberg. Bloomberg's a fascinating place, but it's very Marmite, love it or hate it. And then went back into the buy side at UBS. So now I've got sell side experience on a trading floor, buy side experience in a $6.5 billion multi-strat hedge fund. And bingo, 19th of March 2015, I see the light. People call it red, orange pilling and various colours of pills. For me, it was very simple. A bunch of execs had been invited to Silicon Valley. It was the classic, take your tie off, walk around Silicon Valley, see all the startups. And we met with Coinbase and Ripple on the 19th of March. I know the date because it was that cosmic and seismic to me. When I woke up that morning, I had no idea what Bitcoin was or what blockchain was. You might have asked me.
And that was
that day.
Wow.
Because the Ripple conversation opened my eyes to blockchain. And the Coinbase, and this was Fred and Brian back before that was known what they were going to be. They were talking about crypto. And by the end of the day, I had a Coinbase account. I bought one Bitcoin. I sold it a long, long time ago. So it's not as, but it was at $200, and that's early enough. I'm not a 2008, 9, 10 OG crypto guy, but 2015.
Not spending it on pizza and all that.
Right, I haven't done that. There is no Tim Grant pizza day. But 2015 is early enough. That's coming up for a decade now. It will be a decade soon. And that's where I was like...
And there's still a lot of scepticism, particularly in the traditional markets.
Hugely.
At that time, right?
Huge scepticism, understandably, rightly, I would argue. But it was very early. And I think the thing that really, and this is very relevant to kind of fintech and industry and market microstructure and the growth of where we're going. I was in a $6.5 billion multi-strat hedge fund with 11 prime brokers. Trying to reconcile how you engage with those 11 prime brokers as a 24/5 trading shop across all asset classes was a very expensive proposition. I've got all these data feeds and all these different kind of relationships, and I'm managing my balances and my leverage across these prime brokers. That was a really complicated thing to solve for. And I remember thinking before March of 2015, like this is really inefficient. Like this has got to be a better way. And by this point, I'd actually been given responsibility for technology, which is a very useful thing. I think everyone should have a responsibility for running technology at some point.
Okay.
Precisely because...
Which is unusual, right?
Technology is finance and finance is technology. I think it is unusual. I'm not a technologist by training. But Dawn Fitzpatrick, who was the CEO of O'Connor and is now running Soros's money, was like, right, I think I complained one day about the tech stack, and she was like, right, you're in charge.
You have that then.
And that was so helpful, because the reason I can talk with some authority on the challenges of engaging with a multi-strat hedge fund and all of its trading partners is because I was in charge of the infrastructure for that. And it's horrifically complicated and expensive. Blockchain was the moment. I was like, oh, so you mean we could all connect to one thing, and we could control who sees what, and we could all be sure of what it is, and the real basics of blockchain. And I never looked back. I went back to Dawn and I said, hey, this is a thing. We're supposed to look at it. We started looking at it. We looked at, if you remember digital asset when Blythe Masters was in charge. This was R3 at the very beginning, right? This is the beginning of what we call enterprise blockchain. And so that's where I got into that. Spent some time with David Rutter at R3. That's all blockchain, not crypto. Then we did our own startup. That was to try and help financial institutions use blockchain. That didn't end well, unfortunately, although still the best experience of my career, I will hasten to add.
It's a theme there of lessons, isn't it, when you're going through that, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
You can only, I think I've 1 or 2 grey hairs now. Like, I'm about to be 50, but you start to realise at some point that experience matters.
Yeah.
That having been through cycles, be they market cycles and credit crunches, or be it how we evolve and how we influence people to evolve, and how sticky institutions can be from moving from the past, how defensive they can come across even if they don't want to be. Like, that stuff matters if we want to change anything.
Yeah.
You know? And so that was the we were trying to get that right. It didn't work out. Ended up taking a bunch of the team to SIX Digital Exchange. So now you're in a regulated. You know, SIX is a big financial market infrastructure player, an important one, one of the biggest in Europe, one of the most important in the world, the bedrock of the Swiss market, which is not insignificant. And they decide to set up a regulated CSD and exchange for digital assets.
Yeah.
Like, this is 2018. I remember they announced it. And all of us, I remember going, oh, like, that's a good sign. If a big shop like that is committing to this. I remember, and it's just a theme here, because I did the same with Galaxy when they came out and ended up working at Galaxy. Like, you see these things like, ooh.
Hang on.
So I ended up working and being CEO of SIX Digital Exchange, which was a great experience, great people. You learn, though, that no matter how much money you put at the problem, this is about the lessons, right? If everybody's not aligned, then you're not going to get anywhere. And I don't think I'm out of school saying the ownership of SIX, which is the banks, when I turned up and said, hey, against all the odds, here's your licenses. The team has done an amazing job. Your licenses are coming imminently. So I guess we better start trading on this platform.
Yeah.
And it was crickets at the board. Seriously, it was just, I remember just thinking, why did you spend all this money?
Yeah.
Like, you knew this was coming, right? Someone was going to turn up one day and say, it's good to go, load up your bonds and your structured products and your equities in digital form. And they all kind of looked at each other and went, oh, right. Oh, and I would argue, no disrespect to SIX or SIX Digital Exchange, they're still struggling to get off the ground. If you build it, they won't come, right?
Yeah.
And these are the lessons that really matter. So Galaxy came knocking, awesome opportunity. You know, Mike Novogratz is a player in our space. Got the opportunity to run Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So now it's a trading operation, asset management, investment banking, technology, etc.
You're building up the
really cool.
Yeah.
And actually, to be at Galaxy during the crisis, the next one, you know, our own little financial crisis in digital assets, was really useful because Galaxy is a grown-up organisation. It's full of traditional players who've, like me, we've all made that.
This is now what,
2021 to 23.
Yeah. So right in the eye of the storm.
So right in the eye of the storm.
Yeah.
You know, you walk in and the world is amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's coming and everyone's on the thing. Yeah.
Tail end of 21.
Yeah.
The hype cycle was at its absolute highest. It was at its zenith.
We released a documentary that needed some tailoring just at the very end.
You're like, oops. You know. So things, and then they went to hell in a handbasket, and again, it's the same thing. Like, having been there during that crisis at Galaxy and at UBS during the other one, slightly different story because Galaxy did really well, relatively speaking. This is the stuff that allows you to kind of figure out where to go from here, and then now to kind of where I'm now. The short version of the story is I got reached out to run a company, which turned out to be one of our Deus Ex companies now. And the conversation with our principals, who are the entrepreneurs that created all of this, just turned into, hey, would you like to run all of this and structure all of this? And so I agreed. It was a huge opportunity. I really, really enjoy working with our principals. Shout out to my colleague and this our CIO Stuart Connolly, who's a fantastic partner. Yeah, and between us, we've sat there and working with the family here, figured out what to do with this sprawling asset pool that we own. And so Deus Ex was born. Don't talk about this much. The story behind Deus Ex. Why is it called Deus Ex? Deus Ex Machina. I was sitting there one day thinking about it, right? Yeah. And so Deus Ex Machina technically is like God through the machine.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing about gods and you know, deities here. This is non-religious. But he could also translate it as spirit through the machine, as my Latin scholars have told me I can get away with. And so to me,
always be a Latin scholar and name me a company, right?
Yeah, exactly. Stafford Lowe, he's CEO of Core Prime. He's actually a Cambridge Latin scholar and Cambridge Classic scholar. And so, spirit through the machine is this idea of humanity and technology combining. Yeah. Because that's where we're at. Yeah. Like it's not tomorrow. Yeah. You know, I remember talking.
It's that Industry 5.0, isn't it? The combination of man and machine and the opportunities that can come through there. And I don't think it's one versus the other. It's how can they work to massively improve everything we're looking at. I love that.
It's the only way. And it's inevitable. And I think there's a, you know, I remember talking about the fourth industrial revolution back in 2015, 16 when I was at R3. I was a little bit early, as it turns out. It wasn't landing. People were kind of like, oh, who's this sort of highbrow fourth industrial revolution nonsense? I don't think anyone really has any trouble understanding what that means now. Because we all are literally living and breathing AI in our lives, on our iPhones. We're seeing it at a pace that, as just normal people, we can see it. It's happening.
And it's taken for granted, right? There's so many things there which are now, you know, people will always say that AI has been around for a long time.
Yes.
But now it's just sort of like being badged by everyone. Every little thing that people are doing is now an AI thing, which technically is correct. But it just becomes that much more relevant, doesn't it?
It's funny, the rebadging thing, you know, it's just a constant theme. You know, you call it something else and feel like it's new, but actually it's been there. And I think that's a big theme, you know, especially in this transition, what I call XFi of traditional financial services and these new fantastic tools that we're getting, and now AI. Like, there's just XFi. There's no DeFi, CFi, AI-fi, add another fi. It's like there is financial services today, and there will be financial services tomorrow. What do you choose to power what you give your clients? Like, that's all that really matters. But people love rebadging stuff, and often there's nothing. It's not new.
And they love a challenger story, don't they? Like, if you go back to when we were first started having this conversation, FinTech was there to take out and disrupt banking.
Yes.
And banking then looked at FinTech in its original sort of guise and said, okay, let's create innovation labs and use all the tools to bring it into what we're talking about. There was the TradFi, DeFi. You know, DeFi is here to take over the traditional markets. Then it's, you know, again, TradFi says, right, how can we work and move with it? And I think that's been, for a very conservative industry on the outside, actually I think it's been very good at reacting to threats and then working out how it can live with that and enhance at the same sort of time.
It's so funny you say that, you know, the sort of the naturally adversarial nature of any situation, especially financial services. 20th century financial services is predicated on mine, not in my backyard. Like, if you're winning, I can't win. That's the general theme. It's classic 70s, 80s, 90s, barbarians at the gate, I'll take it all, you'll get nothing. That's not the way of the world going forward. It's we win together, we build together, we collaborate, we create ecosystems that are all intertwined. I think that's what's exciting about this set of tools that we've got. But I think you're right. Only now, I think financial services is starting to say, oh yeah, this isn't a threat. Actually, this is my opportunity to get better and to survive and thrive.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's a shame that sometimes it takes, you know, long to get there.
Well, I think all the headline writers love a combat story, don't they? So it's always got to be them versus us, David versus Goliath, the new breed. But then it turns into something which I think is you know, traditional innovation. It's about evolution of markets, and you know, going back to, you know, the capital market space, it is about electronification, and now it's about the next sort of phase and the next sort of phase and the next sort of phase. So I think it makes it for a fascinating sort of.
And that's the thing, right? We've been through these moments, you know, the Big Bang in the 80s, and you know, this has all been done before. And it's very natural that we try and own, and we sort of sensationalize the change. It's like, no, this is just called evolution and innovation, which has been in financial services since the Italians invented it, you know, the banking industry in the 14th, 15th century. So, you know, this is the backdrop that you land in when you've got the opportunity to take a bunch of assets in this Deus Ex. Spirit through the machine, the combination of the two. That tells you what our investment thesis is, which is a good point maybe to bring up the Casablanca principle. I've talked about this in a while. I've been banging on about this for a few years, and it survives because it feels like it works, and it's like a little mental model to help us all demystify what's really going on, and actually to embrace these tools that we have. So the whole idea behind the Casablanca principle, that it, by the way, could have been any movie. I just love Casablanca, which I watch reasonably regularly. If you haven't watched it, watch it.
Yeah, I haven't watched it for a while, but it is a great film.
It's an amazing story, and especially if you realise that it was done before the end of the war. Then when you realise that, go watch it. You'll see what I mean. I
first watched it in sixth form English.
Yes,
that's where I first came across it.
Amazing movie, like one of the greatest. But that was 1940 or late 30s, early 40s. I think it's 42 or something like that. And you know, it was celluloid back then, right? No other way to distribute and view that movie. Now go forward with time, it turns into, you know, Super 8, and then it turns into VHS and Betamax, and then it turns into laser discs, if you remember those. I used to have those back in the day. Awesome Frisbees these days. And then you've got DVD, then it becomes Blu-ray. And, you know, we're all sitting there with Blu-rays feeling good about ourselves because look at this thing, it's got hours of content, and the sound, the AV quality is amazing. Yeah. And you're like, oh, I've got different versions of the movie on my 2 discs.
Didn't stay for long, did it?
And look how incredible the story is that when things go digitally native, when the end-to-end is you can shoot a movie, you can edit a movie, you can distribute a movie, and you can view a movie without any physical medium anywhere in the value chain whatsoever. That's what happened. We're already living it and breathing it, right? I can watch any movie I want on my phone anytime.
Yeah. And
the most modern movies are shot digitally. That has resulted in a seismic shift of how things are done in the media and the film industry, right? That's music too, but like the movies is sort of more multidimensional. But Casablanca, the movie, is still the same. That asset, that thing from 1942 is still the same thing from 1942.
Yeah. But
if I take that now on my iPhone or my iPad, it's really enhanced. I can get to where I want to go. I've got commentary. I've got multiple languages I can choose in real time.
Yeah.
I've got additional content. You get the idea, right? So it's the same asset. I would argue it's an enhanced asset.
Yeah.
The stuff that you get means you'll pay for that. I'll pay for that. I paid for that in multiple mediums, you know what I mean? You hope now that I've paid for it digitally, I never have to pay for it again. But, you know.
You never know.
You never know. And now with 3D, I don't know how many people have tried this new Apple Vision Pro. That just adds a whole other dimension to it. I was watching some of these movies that were shot in 3D, and it just changes everything, right? So there's nothing more definitive and constant than that evolution.
Yeah.
The asset hasn't changed.
I love that.
So the Casablanca principle says the assets don't change, but the medium does, and the value changes with it, and the industry has to. That's basically my point. Now let's go back to financial services. A bond is a bond is a bond. It's the oldest trick in the book. A liability, I owe you this, it's collateralized or it's not, but that's a loan, right? Let's just go with the most basic starting point before we even talk about equity. If we look at bonds as a medium, and you know, I remember I came from the bond market. In 2015, we were talking about tokenizing bonds at R3. How many bonds have been tokenized in 2024? Very few. It's not a functioning digital asset bond market yet. It will get there, by the way. I believe in it, but
yeah, I was having the same conversation yesterday actually with someone else.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Monday. Yeah,
I've got my wardrobe is full of T-shirts of well, it was a great idea in 2018. It was a great idea in 2015. It was a great idea in 2021. There's still no functioning market for digital assets, and there's recent history is littered with well-intentioned, smart, well-funded companies going down in flames because the market wasn't there.
Wasn't ready yet, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reason I think the Casablanca principle is so important is because it just evolves it beyond, well, I'm this kind of player and I'm going to need that. I need my exchange to do this, or I need my prime broker to do that. You've got to step back and say, for this industry to truly evolve, for us to be getting new value out of a bond and how it engages in our portfolios, which is a sort of, I want to be able to pick up my phone, and instead of looking at a movie, I want to be able to look at my bonds, and I want to be able to control them, and I want to know where they are, and I want to know my collateral is. That's all now feasible for us to build. And it's not like that the technology needs to be tested. It's tested at scale. It's actually the mind. The mindset needs to change. And these big organizations you talked about the innovation labs. Like, I think that's kind of run its course, hasn't it? The innovation theatre.
Yeah.
Sorry if you work in an innovation lab, but innovation lab. Like, why would you outsource and separate the idea of innovation from what is the core business that you do?
Yeah.
So that's the Casablanca principle, and basically defines what we do in our portfolio. That's our thesis: is we invest to make that happen.
I think it's really interesting because I've had. I'm shooting back to a breakfast seminar I went to, and I forget the year, but it was probably not far off about your moment, walking through the valley.
Yeah.
And it was right. This is coming, and there was various different. I remember there was a graph, and it was right. This is the traditional curve, and everyone thought, right, actually this is taking off in the next couple of years, and it's going to beat the cycles. And then some other people in the room were saying, no, it will go through, there'll be early adopters, there'll be changes in it all, and all this sort of thing. And I think it's really difficult, isn't it, to sit there, and I think they were saying back at that sort of stage, it's a 10-year journey as to where it goes. And I think that probably elongates out with everything that we've seen, because it is quite as revolutionary as it is into financial markets. But everyone who knows anything about this sort of space, I think, is fully cognizant of the fact that either the asset class itself or the technology or both will be mainstream in the not too, and it's that position of when. And I guess that comes down to what you're doing and where you're positioning Deus Ex. And as I said at the offset, you put a post out today that I mentioned beforehand was one of the most comprehensive lists of first year highlights that I'd seen in a company at that sort of stage. You've been busy. So give us the sort of précis of what 2024 or year one has looked like for the business.
It's funny, we walked in here earlier and you'd seen the post I put 45 minutes ago. It's like, I'm doing something right. People are seeing these posts. But the upshot of that is, it's almost, I realise it's almost mimetic. I'm almost a meme of how many roles I have and how many businesses we've started.
A lot of hats. I mean, I was looking at it and feeling tired.
Yeah, I get this all the time, by the way. And it's, I was just saying yesterday, like, I'm working very hard, but no harder than before. It's about working smart. Yeah. And we have the good fortune of being able to control our world, so we don't have corporate overhead. So we can be very, very efficient. It's actually one of the things we learned from our UBOs. And so when you look at our portfolio, there's really 4 things we do, and I'll talk about the last bucket because that's the expression of what we're talking about. Well, how do you make a bet if you've got these dynamics? How do you make money if you've got these dynamics sort of that you're fighting against? So we have operating businesses that sort of created this asset pool. We still own all of them: FX, software, hardware, gaming, etc. We have a VC portfolio, so we have the likes of Galaxy and Hilbert Group, which is a 2 in 20 listed crypto hedge fund that we're on the board of, Amina over in Switzerland, so you get the idea. Then we have a fund allocation portfolio, and that's kind of 3 big pillars, but the 4th is what we call Deus Ex Enterprises. That's our venture building unit. A big part of the reason that I took this job was because the mandate was start new companies. Because this is an organisation that understands the value of early equity if you get it right. Now, that is not an accelerator, incubator, VC portfolio, right? We've got a VC portfolio. We expect some of them to do well and some of them to do less well. It's just the name of the game. In the enterprise unit, it's like, no, they've all got to succeed, right? And so how do you do that? You de-risk them, you really think about the proposition, you get the right team, you fund it yourself, you get from 0 to 1, and then you take external, capital, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a model that we're just over a year into. The key pieces of that are Alpha Lab 40, which Stuart Connolly runs, which is our prop unit. So we have 150 million in capital in there. We trade crypto, arbitrage, et cetera. So that's our own money. Makes us a player. 150 million in crypto is not the biggest, but it's not the smallest.
Yeah, absolutely.
It means that we trade with the Galaxies and the Falcon X's and of the world, and we trade on the biggest exchanges. So we're a player. What that taught us is that nobody can get leverage. It's kind of the honking biggest issue in this space, is that you've now got not just the crypto hedge funds. It's all over LinkedIn these days. The surveys, the PwC survey recently, and everybody knows, like, the biggest hedge funds in the world are now trading this asset class. That's not that they will, they are. And they want to do more. The biggest issue they have is they can't get leverage. because the traditional prime brokers will not go near crypto. That makes sense. If I was a large, somewhat lumbering regulated institution, and Goldman Sachs is, you know, the big kahuna alongside Morgan Stanley, UBS, they won't go near this for their client. They won't give them leverage, maybe on the ETFs, but like there's a bigger market than that. Mm-hmm. And if you want to trade this stuff, leverage is the lifeblood of this market. Remember, we'll go back to my UBS O'Connor days, right? I was sitting there with 11 prime brokers. We had $6.5 billion of capital, but we traded 24. We had the firepower of 24 billion. Mm. This is how capital markets works. This is how liquidity is formed. If you don't have that, you're stuck. And the biggest pools of capital want to trade this, but they're stuck because there's not enough lending capital available. So core prime is our expression of that. What do we do to solve that problem? And basically we're building a very institutional, highly regulated in Bermuda and Abu Dhabi credit provisioning capability, i.e. we'll take risk capital from insurance companies, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, the institutional allocators. The net new dollar needs to come into this space to create leverage. If we're just recycling, talk about renaming term, people talk about staking and restaking like it's a thing. Like, no, it's just asset transformation. We've been doing this for decades. You need risk capital. If we just recycle within our industry, there's no additional leverage. We're just sort of creating this back. We're back in CDO squared territory, which is, you know, I've been there. That's not a pretty outcome in the end. You need the net new capital to come in, but they'll only come in if you've got a highly institutional view of the world. The fact that we're lending and people will be trading crypto is neither here nor there. The people we're lending to give them leverage, either through a direct lending, collateralized lending, or on exchange lending. This is the biggest hedge funds and the galaxies of the world, right? This is the hidden roads. Hidden Road is a prime in our space. We want to be a capital provider to the likes of Hidden Road. We love what Hidden Road are doing. So that's what this whole core prime construct is about. It's about creating that. Very excited. Got a fantastic team. We'll be up and running.
Yeah, I looked at some of the names there. It's impressive, isn't it?
It's a really great crew. It's the best thing about what I do is you get to work with the best people, and we will go live. Somewhere Q1, Q2. We'll get risk capital from those types of players. We'll have those types of institutional clients. Our goal is to be one of, because there's got to be more of us. I want like people might say, don't you want to be first, biggest? No, I just want to be relevant, we need more of people like to come and do what we're doing. Because back to the cautionary tale of 2008, O'Connor was actually one of the first. UBS O'Connor was one of the first to go multi-prime. From everyone was like one or two primes, and then everyone went, oh wait a minute, there's quite a lot of risk in my primes. What if one goes down? And again, we've seen it all again with Archegos and all that stuff at Credit Suisse. Like, this stuff is real. Yeah. So we need more primes. So we're very excited by that. Solstice Labs we've launched recently, which is our institutional DeFi unit. So excited for Ben Nadereski to step up and take CEO of that. Think of things like Athena, and think of doing that next step, more buttoned up, more institutional, like more trying to make it so that the net investment dollar doesn't come from just inside our ecosystem, but outside. We own Haven, which is a payments unit under Richard Crook. Like, we've got a lot going on, but the key is they all fit together. Now, we mentioned Apex. And, it's funny, you said earlier, like, AI has been around for a long time. Like, when we did Benchmark Solutions, we were doing machine learning, basically, and it was, complex event processing back then, ingesting information, reacting quickly, building credit. That was AI by any definitive measure. So it's not new.
Certainly rebadged now.
It's rebadged, and it's very exciting, and I think it's genuinely kind of reached its moment.
And what Usman and the team are doing with it is incredible.
Well, this is what I love about Usman. Right? Usman, who I've got huge respect for and love working with him, and being chairman of Apex as well, is, one day we're talking about AI and he's like, oh yeah, we've been working on AI sort of in the back office there for a couple of years with Google. Wait, what do you mean? Have you? Have we? And so kudos to Usman and the team. We know we don't just use ChatGPT. You know what I mean? We train our own models. We can do this on bare metal infrastructure to reduce the costs, the inflated costs from from the cloud these days, and we're working with the biggest asset managers in the world. And we're looking to, it's all about ROI for those asset managers. Like, it's super exciting. This is where the rubber hits the road. And the biggest pools of capital start leveraging this in their investment process. We're very excited about where Apex goes, but we made an investment in that because that will be useful for Solstice Labs. That will be useful for Core Prime.
And that's the beauty of having everything sort of meshed together.
And that's basically the concept. Like, we invest in all of these, we believe in them in their own right, but it's greater than the sum of the parts. Rising tide lifts all ships. And back to your point about 1 year, I must admit, as I was writing that post last night, I was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff. I actually ran out of space. It stopped.
Exactly.
I could have put more, but it was like, no, you can't do more. It was quite gratifying. Like, we got something right.
It's good when you have those sort of moments, isn't it?
Oh, wow, we've done a lot.
Done all right.
All that plate spinning and all those flights around the world, it comes to something. But we're only just getting started. Right? We've got the next leg of the journey will be how do we get better at that. We will launch more businesses in 2025.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Talk to us about the future. What's it look like now?
Well, I think so. Right now, I mentioned those operating businesses, and we actually have a pretty big engine of capability there in foreign exchange, which, by the way, is ripe for also needing to evolve. Like, retail and institutional FX is quite sort of old school as well, actually, even though it's electronified and all that. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to start to engage with our operating businesses a little bit more. So that's a big theme. You'll see announcements about that likely in next year. But I'm not giving any away. Like, I think crypto and digital assets and insurance is kind of an area that also needs to happen. Like, if we can't get if we solve the leverage problem, then you can't get insured. Literally D&O insurance. So companies like SOTA under Henson also is doing great. I like what they're doing. Like, I imagine we would want to think about being in insurance or reinsurance. Part of the reason we went to Bermuda is because if you're a traditional prime, your balance sheet's easy to get. Remember, in the 2000s, we didn't even ask where the balance sheet was coming from. Didn't even know. Turns out we're a bank balance sheet. If we didn't have deposits, we go to the Fed window, we can go to the bond markets. You can't do that in crypto. There's no bond markets, there's no Fed window. So the money has to come from somewhere else, and that's what we're trying to solve for. Bermuda's been doing this for decades. 80% of the world's reinsurance goes through here. They don't have access to Fed windows. They get money from sovereign wealth funds and insurance companies and everything I just said. So I think there's a crossover, there's a trick there. We'll see where that goes, but I suspect we'll do more of that next year.
Just pulling strings.
And that's the thing, you kind of sniff your way to the next adjacency, and then you're like, right, well, we've got this, let's just add that. So I think that's what you'll see, but our intention is to be, I want to be a bit careful with this, but like, what are we? We're not a VC. We're not pure fund. We're not yet raising external capital. We might actually. We're a bit of a hybrid, so you're going to create a new category, which is we're not really a family office in the classic sense of the term. We're an investment and operating company, and I think we want to make a name for ourselves of being able to build and launch and invest in good companies with good people. But how it all fits together I think will be the big theme for 25.
Good people and good companies, good ideas.
That's all it's about.
It's always the same thing, isn't it? Tim, I could be speaking about this for a long, long time. It's been fascinating hearing the story all the way through. And actually, I think it's just such an exciting space that you're in. And as I say, I know the few of the people that are involved in this whole thing. It's really exciting to watch from the outside. As I said, I loved that post yesterday or this morning, and seeing that sort of journey. I think when you're in it, and that's what hopefully has been a good fun for you over the last couple of days. Is when you're in it, I think you sometimes sort of are hypercritical when you're busy and running around and flying all over the place. It's difficult to understand what you've done, what you've changed, where you've moved over it. And categorising it like that, I think, is fantastic. Seeing what you're talking about, being in the space that I think is probably one of the most, or probably two or three of the most exciting spaces in the markets at the moment, is really exciting to have in there. So, look, I want you to come back and talk to us again on this, and to keep on talking to us about this journey, because it sounds like it's a fascinating one. It sounds like it's
we're only just getting started, and I'm having the best fun.
So people who are looking for great fun, people who are good people who've got good ideas and good companies, I presume these are people that you want to get in touch with as well.
Definitely.
What's the best way for them to reach you?
LinkedIn actually has ended up being my little world, you know. So find me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I do look at the messages on LinkedIn. There's a lot that come through, but it's the best way to get me, unless you can find some other route, you know, someone else who knows me. But we are always looking, you know. Look, what I will say is you got to have your own filter, right? You get a lot of people that come and they have kind of harebrained, crazy ideas. You know, like we are genuinely looking for great ideas, great early stage companies. We will buy distressed assets. We can kind of do anything we want, which is you know, has positive and negatives. But yeah, I just think about how to approach me first.
Well, that's the piece, isn't it? I've had a number of different people from various elements of the parts that you've spoken about, from family offices through to, to VCs, through to to PE companies, all across the board. And I think the key thing there is there's a lot of people there who are coming and looking for this, and the amount of people and even actually, I think I did a show with Usman on this a couple of years ago, where it's just and we spoke about how to raise capital and how to seek investment and how to get in that sort of thing, and actually the thought process of making it as easy as possible. It's the same thing as when I talk to capital market startups thinking about how they break through procurement. There's a whole thing about making it as easy as possible to be there, and does it tie in, as you've just said, to the story which you're building over at the company at the moment. So. Look, hopefully there will be people out there who do that. I'm really fascinated to see what happens over the next year or so.
I know there are. I want to meet them.
Good man, Tim. It's been great having you on the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.